Hey everybody, Tim here with today's episode of Star Trek Voyager, Season 6, Episode 7, Dragon's Teeth. This episode was so close to being like a really high rating. Like, it could have been fantastic. But unfortunately, like, there were a few setbacks, and then looking at it from hindsight, knowing the future of Star Trek, like, I did give it a little bit lower of a rating than I should have, which is unfair. I totally admit that, but whatever, I'm the one watching it. So this episode, basically, it starts out with a flashback that we don't know is a flashback, with this alien race just being attacked, and like instantly a sympathetic character, and like we just see this city being annihilated. So then we jump to Voyager, and Voyager is stuck in this subspace corridor, and this alien's like, "What are you doing in my property?" And like it's almost like the character from Powerpuff Girls or something. And they basically, Janeway's like, "We're trying to get out. Like, could you help us?" And so he like forces them out 200 light years later, which in like 30 seconds. So instantly Janeway's like, "Well, now this is interesting." And he's like, "Prepare to be boarded. We're going to delete all your records." And Janeway's like, that's not going to happen. And so they start attacking Voyager, and we see Voyager land. Which, every time we've seen Voyager land in this series, basically it's just Janeway being like, "Land the ship!" And then we see the ship on the ground. We never actually see them land. To my knowledge, this is actually the closest where we see them in the city descending. So that was actually a kind of cool shot. So, we can instantly tell that, by coincidence, this is the same city that was being bombed in the beginning, in the teaser, which was 900 years ago. And we find this guy, Geedon, whatever his name was, and that's basically in stasis. And Seven decides to wake him up, and he's like, "Oh, I'm part of the Vaadwaur." And he's like, I was this great civilization, and then everybody just started bombing us for no reason. Which kind of, like, as a viewer, we're like, that's not going to be accurate. I know that. And it's kind of, now, this is where this episode gets really, really interesting, is he sees Seven, and he's like, "You're part of the Borg." And she's like, "Yes." And he's like, "The Vaadwaur, like encountered your people." And Janeway's like, "Do you know his species?" And she's like, 900 years ago, the Borg's records are sketchy at best. Which is mind-blowing to me. Like, that's what I'm interested. That's what I want to know about. Because nobody really knows about the creation of the Borg. Like, was the first Borg the Borg Queen? What's going on? One of the big, like, fan theories in the Star Trek franchise is V'Ger from the Star Trek motion picture, where it was, the Voyager 6, I think, that gets launched into space, encounters a technological life form, binds with it, and starts collecting other data. But still, that would have been, like, 300 years ago, and we don't really know, like, how far back the Borg go. Like, I mean, they've only encountered or, like, assimilated, like, 10,000 species or something. So, like, for 900 years, like, what were they doing? So I find that super interesting that 900 years ago, they were around, but they were not nearly as advanced as they are now. So that's really interesting to me, and I kind of want to do more research on that. He also recognizes Neelix as being a Talaxian, although he had a different name for it. And they're like, "Do you recognize my species?" And Neelix is like, "Yeah, the name Vaadwaur, like, I think it meant foolish in the old tongue." And he's like, "Oh shit, that was rude, I'm sorry." And so that's where we start getting more and more hints. And so Geedon shows us that there's like hundreds of these life pods, the stasis pods, around, and that they are purposely trying to, like, rebuild their civilization. And Chakotay is the one who brings up the title, Dragon's Teeth, that a dragon's teeth were sewn around a battlefield and more soldiers popped up out of it. So slowly the Vaadwaur actually start popping up, building ships, and they're like, "Okay, it's time for us to, like, go out and get our territory back." Well, Neelix is continuously, he's like, "Vaadwaur, like, where do I know that?" And starts looking up, like, folklore. He teams up with Seven, and it turns out that Vaadwaur actually was these people who would use these subspace corridors and invade other planets and other technology, and that because they were conquered, that's why they were considered foolish, and that all of these people banded together to bomb them. So Deidrin actually teams up with Voyager, who teams up with the alien races up in space that were keeping them down there, and is like, hey, all of these ships are about to come out. You should probably start firing. And as they're going to war, Voyager kind of slips out. And it turns out that 53 of these ships escaped. And Seven feels responsible. She's like, this is my fault because I'm the one that woke them up. And Janeway's like, realistically, we would have woken them up anyway. But still, like, looking at their subspace corridors and all of this, like, it's not going to be the last time we see them. But it is. Like, I mean, granted, there's only 2 seasons left for Voyager, the rest of season 6 and season 7. They set it up so you think the Vaudois are going to be like this major emissary, like this major bad, the big bad, for a while, but they're not. We barely see them through the rest of the series. Which, it seems like that was kind of Voyager's, like, motif throughout the series, where, like, we would meet the Kazons, and now they're the big bad for a while. And then we meet the Viridians, and then they're the big bad for a while. And we would just meet these aliens, and we'd stick with them for, like, a season or two. But for this one, it didn't go anywhere, which is really disappointing for me. So for those who have seen this episode, what did you guys think about it? Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for subscribing. And I will see you guys next time for One Small Step.